the big screen. Love it. Okay, cool. So we are here to give you that experience. See a film you think you've seen and finally see it with an audience of folks that are laughing and screaming alongside you. And then for first-time folks who've never seen the film, a great opportunity to see them on the big screen. Our programming kind of is a mix-up of classics like Gremlins and also new independent, foreign, international, LGBT, student, short films. This week we kicked off the Hola Mexico Film Festival. That is for a week. It's 8 incredible new independent films from Mexico that don't have distribution yet, that you can only see here at the Frida. Proud of that. We've got our Ingmar Bergman month this month. January, we're doing a tribute to 1999 in cinema, so we have a bunch of films from '99 that you love that are turning 20 years old. And here's a couple of things I always like to say. One, we read all your emails, all your Facebook messages. We have 2 screens to get creative in. We program internally, we're curatorial. The more you tell us what you want to see, the more we can give you what you want to see. So keep your recommendations and your requests coming. You will often find that we will program like opportunities to play them. And 2 is find us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So really quick plug on our gift cards. We have gift cards for those of you who are looking for like stocking stuffers to buy. We've got great gift cards in the lobby for designs. They're refillable, they're awesome. And moving forward, who wants to meet Zach Galligan tonight?
Yeah.
Right on. So Zach plays Billy Peltzer. We will meet in a moment in this film. Zach will be here as soon as the movie's over, so stay in your seats to talk to us about his experiences making this amazing film. And then he'll be out in the lobby meeting and greeting with you all. So, this is where we separate the fans from the audience. Who would like to win this mask?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fit on my head. I don't wear glasses, so it's all right, I promise that all right, so it's going to be a contest. Only raise your hand if you really think you can pull this off. All right. Mogwai, or Gizmo, hums a little melody. Okay, your hand was the first one to come up. I would like you to come up here and take this mic. But I want to hear the actual melody. Let's hear it. It's going like, what is the song that Gizmo hums? Do you know it? I don't know. I'm like, okay, Logan, it's all right. Shoot. Well done! Awesome. We may or may not have another mask to give away later. Stick around. So folks, we will have Gremlins again tomorrow at 2 p.m. For those of you who absolutely love the movie, come back, tell your friends. And without further ado, sit back, relax. Don't forget to stick around after the show and enjoy the amazing Joe Dante directed, Steven Spielberg produced Gremlins. Thank you.
Yeah.
What'd you think? Right on. Let's give a round of applause to Gremlins one more time. I love this movie. I almost feel like I'm cheating you by not letting you hear the closing music. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our special guest for the evening. You saw him tonight in that film as Billy Peltzer, Mr. Zach Galligan.
Yeah. Hey.
I'm going to see a thought in your head while we're doing this. Think of a trivia question that only the most diehard Gremlins fan would know. And we're going to give them this beautiful Stripe mask. I know you all want the Gizmo mask, but look at Stripe. Any Stripe fans out there?
Yeah.
All right, right on. Yeah, Stripe needs love too. So how you doing?
I'm doing great. How's everybody doing? You enjoy the show?
Oh yeah, always.
I'm going to ask you, we have a lot of Q&As, and more often than not, folks elect not to watch the movie again. Maybe they've seen it a million times. But you were back there for a while watching the movie. Just curious to know, when you rewatch it years later, do you have any thoughts or something maybe new every time, or did you experience anything from watching with an audience or anything like that tonight?
I've probably only seen it like maybe 10 or 12 times over 34 years, which really isn't that much. I saw someone in the lobby, they said they've seen it 300 times.
More than that.
More than that.
You've seen it over 300 times?
Huh?
How many times have you seen it, JD?
Oh God, I mean, I don't. It could be more. It's probably more than that.
I've spoken to people who've seen it literally, hundreds of times. They'd say, I'd come home and I'd turn it on after school, every day when I came home from school. I was like, for how long? They're like, like 3 years. It's like 1,000 times to see a movie. They're like, yeah, probably about that. It's crazy. They do the dialogue and talk along with it. So, I see different things every time I see it. Joe Dante likes to kind of pack the frame with all sorts of different things going on. Like today I noticed something I hadn't seen in a while, which is when Mrs. Deagle is talking to Belinda Belaski, who's the woman in front of the bank with the 2 kids. She says, now you know what to ask Santa for. Then Dick Miller is doing like a little Mr. Futterman thing in the corner of the frame. And he's watching, and when she says something nasty, he goes like, and like walks away. Like I'd never seen that before. And the Gremlins and Gremlins 2 are both like that. You can watch them again and again, and you can see things in the frames that you probably hadn't noticed. How many people noticed that when my father, Rand, was at the convention with Robbie the Robot behind him talking, when they first show it, there's the time machine in the background.
Yeah.
And then when it cuts away, when it cuts back, it's gone. They're on the floor looking for it. Where'd it go? Like there's all sorts of ridiculous jokes and funny gags like that. It's packed in the movie, and I think that's probably one of its appeals.
And a Spielberg cameo too, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I just always like to turn it over to the audience first. If anyone has any pressing questions they've been sitting on, yes.
What I'd like to know is the first time you saw the whole film, after all the editing and creatures and everything had been added, what did you think?
The question is, what was my first impression of the movie? Well, let me just tell you how I saw it. Joe Dante and Mike Fennell, the producer, said, we want to show you and Phoebe the cut of the movie so that you understand what you're going to see when you go to the world premiere, which is at the Gremlins Chinese Theater up in Hollywood Boulevard. So we said, great. So they said, yeah, so come to Warner Brothers Studios and we have a small screening room where we'll just show it to you. And they weren't kidding. They had maybe 12 seats in it. It was tiny little, it was kind of like, remember they used to cut the multiplexes down into like, 10 or 12 theaters. You go into like theater number 7, it had like 8 seats and the screen was like the size of a television set. So the screen was really small and they showed us the movie with no audience or anything. They sat in the front row, Joe and Mike, and Phoebe and I sat in the back row, which is maybe 2 or 3 rows back, because they didn't want to like influence us or our reactions or anything like that. And when I first saw it, I was like, what the hell am I in? Like, they got to the bar scene with like the Frank Sinatra gremlin is like, is kind of soothing his existential angst and pain, listening to jazz music, and then suddenly the little puppet comes in, and the puppet messing with another puppet. Metaphysical puppet movie? What on earth am I in? Because when we made the movie, I mean, I don't know if you can see this, but you had cars flipping over and things exploding and blowing up movie theater. I thought I was like in an action movie. I didn't realize I was in the world's largest live action cartoon ever made. And so Phoebe felt the same way. So she and I, when it was over, the crate, there just might be a gremlin in your house, da 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 da. And so they turned around, they're like, "What'd you think?" And Phoebe and I looked at each other, and I swear,
Can we go outside?
Can she and I just like have a moment together? And we walked outside, and they were like, "Oh, I don't know." So I walked outside with Phoebe, and I said, "What do you think?" She goes, "I don't know. What do you think?" I said, "Is it any good? Like, does it suck?" I don't know. I don't know what I'm in. I have no idea what I'm in. So when she and I went to the Chinese theater premiere the next night, I went like I thought I could be going to like a public execution. I thought it was going to be something. I thought it could bomb. Everybody thought it could bomb. Chris Wallace, the guy who created Gizmo, He thought it was going to ruin his career. He thought he was done. By the way, he was only 28 when he did Gizmo. It's pretty kind of amazing, you know, for practical effects. Created all of that stuff basically all on his own with his team. So we went to long story short, we went to the Chinese theater. And by the time we got to my mom, Frances Lee McCain, yeah, bring those lights up, that's good, I like to see you guys. Stabbing everyone and putting the gremlin in the microwave and it explodes. And of course the joke is after it explodes, it goes ding, right, the microwave is done. The screaming and the yelling and the response, you couldn't hear the ding. 1,500 people screaming and shouting and throwing things at the screen, and Phoebe was like about a row ahead of me, just over to the right. I can close my eyes, I can see it. She turned around, she goes, I think we have one of the biggest hits of the summer. I was like, holy cow. I couldn't believe it, and it did. It went on to be the actually number 3 movie of 1984 in terms of box office, and one of the only movies ever to do better business in its second weekend than in its first. Most movies drop off. This one actually gained about 11% with the same number of screens. So, yeah. And here I am 35 years later, you know, talking about it. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, and I remember, there's people out here, right, who saw this when it first came out. I'm not the only old man in the art. Very cool. And I don't know if you remember this, or for those of you who don't know, but back in the day, what they used to do really effectively is they wouldn't show you the characters in commercials. So E.T., for example, you got a finger. That's all you had until you went to see the movie to actually see the alien. He wasn't in ads, he wasn't in commercials until much, much later. And then Gremlins, you had the trailer, you had the shot of the backs of the Gremlins jumping, their silhouettes in the theater. It's about all you got for the monster. So I'm 9 years old, I'm begging my parents to go take me to see Gremlins. And this is back when Spielberg meant MZ and fantasy. And I don't know about you, but there were like pretty traumatizing, horrible, scary things in this movie for kids, but they could do that back then. You would get away with a PG-13 rating at the time. I'm wondering, when you were making the film, do you remember, like, what genre of film was it being directed as, if that makes any sense? Did you feel like you were being directed to be in a Frank Capra-esque Christmas film? Did you feel you were in a comedy? Did you feel you were in a horror film in terms of the approach that Dante was taking and just the vibe on set?
Well, I mean, it was pretty undeniable at the time that there was going to be a lot of humor in the movie. I mean, try doing a scene with Dick Miller and not cracking up. The guy's like a walking cartoon character. He's amazing. And obviously there were lines that were, you know, you could tell we're going to have a nice effect, like they're watching Snow White, they love it. You know, when he said that line, at the time you knew that was going to be a good line. But the great thing about Joe Dante is he would let everybody throw their suggestions in. So like when Judge Reinhold says, hey Kate, you have to see my new apartment. She said, I haven't seen your old apartment. And he said, well, come on, like what are you waiting for? When we were doing it one time, afterwards I said, yeah, we're talking cable. And I said that as a joke, as an ad lib, and Joe was like, that's great, throw that in there. And so that's how that made that was just an ad lib that I threw out just as a joke. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, there would be all sorts of suggestions people would throw out, and you know, like Phoebe, for example, in that same scene, she's the one who said, you know, I would like there to be a little moment. Kind of foreshadowing, which is kind of an amazing thing for a 19-year-old, actor to think. I was going to say actress, but that might sound sexist. Anyone 19 who's an actor thinking like, let's do some foreshadowing here at the 20-minute mark in the movie. That's a pretty clever thing to think of. She said, there's all this sawdust on the floor. I'm going to put a piece of sawdust on your jacket. And so when Gerald insults you, I'll just reach over and pick the sawdust off your shoulder like, I don't like you, I like him, and I'm grooming him. And I thought, wow, what a great choice. And if you look, I notice her doing it, and there's a little look passes between us, and it's like, there you go, we're destined for each other, and screw this guy, he's a jerk. You know? So all of those little subtle things that were thrown in there, you know, you can really credit Joe Dante for saying, yeah, let's do that, or that's cool, or that'll work. Another example is, I've told this story a bunch of times, but we were walking through the department store after lunch, and I saw a chainsaw on the wall, and I said, what is that? Because Joe was always doing little tributes to movies in it, like when I'm running through the town in the beginning, I go, "Hey, Dr. Moreau," you know, like I went to Dr. Moreau. So like all those silly jokes like that, and I saw the chainsaw on the wall, and I said, "Is that your Toby Hooper, tribute there for Texas Chainsaw Massacre?" And Joe goes, "As a matter of fact, it is." And I said, "Wouldn't it be cool if like I grabbed the chainsaw off the wall and like the gremlin and I got in like a chainsaw baseball bat duel to the death?" And Joe goes,
2 minutes.
"Give me 5 minutes." And I was like, "What?" And he came back, and in his head, in that 5 minutes, he sort of choreographed the whole fight with the baseball bat and the chainsaw, which was kind of scary since we used a real chainsaw blade at the time. And it's actually cutting through the bat, very close to taking one of my fingers off. So, nowadays, that was the early 80s when litigation basically didn't exist. Certainly not in the way that it does now. So that's a really long-winded answer to a question. We were just trying to make something that was humorous and fun and exciting and kind of like, we wanted it to be E.T.-esque because it was coming. We shot it right on the heels of E.T., and E.T. was, at the time, the single most successful movie ever been made, at least in terms of box office revenue. So that's what we were trying to do, and of course Joe eventually would say, would describe Gremlins as "It's a Wonderful Lizard of Oz in Hell." That was his name for it.
That works. From the audience. Yes?
Did you like number 1 or number 2 better?
Oh, it's the "do I like number 1 or number 2" question better. I'm a big number 1 guy. I love the tone of it. I like how it shifts tones. Really, I think, really quite brilliantly. Even though I'm in it, I know it sounds bad to say that, but I think it's one of the reasons why the movie's successful, because it makes you go, "Wow, that's funny. Wow, that's messed up. That's really messed up. Oh my God, they just murdered Mrs. Deagle. She's the Wicked Witch. I love it." And so it really does take you on a roller coaster ride. Gremlins 2 is a very different movie. It's a very subversive, bizarre sequel that actively attempts and succeeds in destroying the original movie and the franchise with it. And so...
Not a fan.
Well, no, I mean, it just did. It just did. It's 1990. Last time I checked, it's 2018. That's 28 years later. I don't see no more Gremlins. Where's Gremlins 3? Hello? Is it back there? Where's Gremlins 3? I recently had the 25th anniversary of being asked, "When's Gremlins 3 coming out?" So that's kind of fun.
Was that intentional to try to not recreate the first one and go to different? Or?
I think what happened is that Joe Dante had complete creative control. What he just decided was they were like, "Do the thing when the gremlins and then it explodes and the thing at the end," and he's like, "Well, I already made that movie. Like, I don't want to make that movie, and making that movie was kind of hell. I want to make something else." And what he really wanted to make was even more of a live-action cartoon. I mean, the movie even opens with a Chuck Jones cartoon. By the way, for those of you who like animation, Chuck Jones has a small cameo, and he's the guy playing my art teacher at the bar when I have the Mrs. Deagle as the dragon sketch, and he goes, "Oh, you're doing really well there, Bill." And I'm like, "Thanks, Mr. Jones." It's Chuck Jones sitting next to me. So he's awesome. He was tremendous. God bless him. Rest his soul. And he actually, when we were sitting there, he was nervous because even though he had 2 lines, when you're not an actor, you're nervous. I mean, even when you are an actor, you're sometimes nervous too. He was a little bit nervous, so to kill the time, he drew an original Roadrunner cartoon on a napkin, a cocktail napkin. He created Roadrunner, for people who don't know that, and gave it to me. And I was like, "Wow, I have a one-of-a-kind," and I put it in the back of my jeans, and the person who was helping me take care of my place where I was staying in Westwood, put it in the wash. Luckily, there was no eBay at the time, so I didn't care. I was kind of, well, I'll just ask for another one at some point. That never happened. So yeah, I don't dislike Gremlins 2. I think sometimes it gets a little Muppet movie-ish, which I like more of the human-gremlin interaction. I think sometimes you know, if I'm sitting there going, can the humans show up? And then there's probably, you know, a little bit of a problem. But here's what's so funny. There are people who love Gremlins 2 and think it's a far superior movie. Those people are insane. Usually what happens is people see Gremlins 2 first, and so that's the template. They're like, this is what a Gremlin film should be. It should be hilarious. So there should be cross-eyed gremlins, and there are cartoons that open in the beginning, and so that's what they think it is. Then they see the second one, and they go, this is dark, and got stuck in the chimney? What is this? And they just think it's creepy and bizarre, and they dark, and they don't like it. They like the more cartoonish Gremlins movies. So there's one for everyone in the entire family. Keep them happy.
I'll turn it back over to the audience, but I do have a question. And
you gotta get the guy in the Gizmo
we'll get to
suit.
Gizmo.
Come on, the guy's in the Gizmo
You went out of the way.
suit.
Get up for a second.
That's dedication, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, baby. It's like the large and the small. He's like, it's like a Gizmo fractal. It's like it's crazy. What's your question? Did you have questions, sir? What's your question?
You go first.
I was wondering, I'm a big fan of Hoyt Axton, and amazing musician and songwriter, and so I was wondering what it was like working with him.
Oh, what a great question. What was it like working with Hoyt Axton, who played my dad? Well, I learned something really incredibly valuable from him, especially during the scene. It was one of my favorite scenes in the movie where he gives me the gift initially and tells everybody, myself and my family and everyone, the entire audience, the rules. And he started doing this scene, and he kind of started messing up because he wasn't getting the dialogue correct. So Joe Dante, who's really quite a good and excellent director, went up to him and said, listen, here's the thing. As long as you get the information out, you just say it the way that you would say it. Like, don't worry so much about it. So they turn the camera on, and Hoyt goes, all right, so here's what we do. You don't get them wet. Don't get them wet. You don't want to do that. And he just kind of, slid into his Oklahoma Elvis kind of thing that he has going on, which is weird because he wrote a song for Elvis that Elvis recorded, Never Been to Spain. And his mom actually wrote Heartbreak Hotel. So it's kind of incredible that both he and his mother wrote #1 singles for Elvis, which is kind of shocking. I don't think anyone, mother-son combination will ever match that. And so he was very, very cool and relaxed. So I was watching him do it, and he was so calm. I was thinking to myself, this is what I thought. Wow, this guy you can tell he's a country singer. He's really not an actor. I mean, it looks like he's doing absolutely nothing. Wait a second. Wait, that's probably really good for a film actor, is to look like you're doing absolutely nothing. But you don't want a magician doesn't want you to see how to do the trick, or else it's a terrible magician. So maybe the actor doesn't want. Maybe what I should try and do is, rather than perform, which I had been doing in some of the earlier scenes, maybe I should just try and exist like he's doing in front of the camera in a believable, realistic way. And you can kind of see when they turn around for my close-up, when he's reading me the rules, I finally clicked in my head, you know what, I'm just gonna think about what I think about those rules. I'm not gonna try and perform anything. I'm just gonna think about, I'm gonna just listen to what he's saying and what I think about it. And that's probably, the first time in my career, which was only a couple of years old, but that I actually saw some of the rushes, in the dailies, because they let you kind of see, if you want to, some people let them see your performance as it goes along, like you can see what you shot yesterday and learn from it. The first time I watched it, I thought, I'm going to want to do more of that. And when I later became an acting teacher at NYU for about 10 years, I would always say this: if you think it, the audience will see it. And all the great actors, film actors that is, they simply are not performing at all. They're putting themselves in a believable position and forgetting about the camera, and they're just thinking exactly the way a normal human would think in that situation and letting the camera capture it. So that's what I learned from Hoyt Axton. He was the bomb. I loved him. He's a great guy.
Zach.
Yes, sir.
when does after midnight end? What exactly is after midnight?
Of course, we addressed this rather profusely in Gremlins 2, where they say, what if you get a caraway seed stuck in your teeth and travel across the international time zone? And if you're in a plane, what is it, you know? So, I mean, don't get them wet, simple. Bright light, simple. But then there's a time limit, so you want to keep it simple. So you don't want to say, never feed him between 12:01 and 4:56. And then, that's just not a good rule. And people are like, what is it? So it's just, never feed him after midnight. It probably should have been after midnight and before dawn or something like that. But that's, again, too cumbersome. So the point is, it's a movie. It's a kind of silly movie about rubber puppets. So you probably shouldn't overthink it.
Speaking of rubber puppets, I got to thank Trick or Treat Studios. Everyone give a round of applause for Trick or Treat Studios. Our program director had seen their masks on their website, just told them what we're doing, and they just sent us the Gizmo, the stripe, to give away to you folks. Where's Gizmo? You still here? Right on. Hold that up. So great. Okay. So, Frida, do you have something in mind as to we can do this giveaway? I got a question for everyone about
Oh, God.
factoid.
Let's take one more question, and I'll think of the
Yeah.
factoid as I'll multitask.
Yes, Mr. Gremlins, 6,000 times.
Let me ask you something. There's a snack bar out in the lobby. If I were to get you an extra large Diet Coke, would you do your belching act for us?
Belching act? I would not. But what I will refer to what this gentleman's talking about, at one point when we were doing Gremlins 2, I was drinking a lot of diet soda, and at one point I let out just a gigantic belch. And Joe Dante heard it and was like, that is absolutely disgusting. And I was like, yeah, you never heard me do the alphabet? So I drank and I did like A, B, C, D, E, and I did belching stuff like that. Remember, I was like, in my early 20s, I was. So Joe remembered that, and when it was time to do some of the vocal effects for Gremlins 2, where the things like the vegetable gremlin and all the gremlins start drinking the Christopher Lee, Dr. Catheter's potions and stuff like that, they start belching, so burping. So after I'd done all of my dialogue, I was like, that's the last line. They're like, that's it. I'm like, yay, rap on because you go to a special sound stage. We did one out here in the valley. And Joe said, wow, you're not finished yet. I'd like you to grab a soda from the cooler, and I would like you to do some quality gremlin belching. And I said, for real? He goes, absolutely. So Mark Mangini, who's the sound guy, was behind me, the board, and so on the front of it, there's the screen for me there. The sound guys are behind me, and they queued up the thing, and I got a Diet Coke, and I swallowed it with huge amounts of air and everything like that, just so it was going on. And they said, I looked back at Mark and his assistant, and I said, ready? And they're like this. They're like, which means go. So I just want to start going, I was just belching like crazy. Just going for it. And I turned around after when it was over, I was like, how was that? And I just saw Mark Mangini and the other sound guy who just had their head down and were just going like this. Just shaking with laughter. And apparently one of them was so kind of gross and ripe and fabulous that they took it and put it on the permanent sound reel that people use in movies. So when you watch Kramer on Seinfeld burp, it's actually just my burp. So one of my favorite things to do is watch some Seinfeld episode and you see Kramer and he goes, like that, and I go, that's me! That wasn't a burp, that was a burp.
Do you get residuals for that?
I get no royalties, I just get the joy of having my belch in Seinfeld. So that's what he's referring to. But I will not repeat it. I did recently do it.
It was a joke.
On a British game show called Celebrity Juice. And it was not well received. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Speaking of what you were saying before about normal human reactions that the actors give.
Sure.
Every time I watch this movie, I'm just amazed at how, everybody, especially like you to Corey Feldman, like they're presented with the Mugwai, and I know he's cute and everything, but it's like they're just instantly fine with it. Like they're not. It's all good, and actually, even for a while after they turned into Gremlins, it's kind of just like go with the flow. I just wonder, like, how you think your reaction would contrast if you were actually presented with a Mugwai.
So here's an interesting point. The gentleman posits the following, that our reactions to the Mogwai are underwhelming, so to speak. That if we were actually presented with something incredibly cute like that, we would, I guess, lose our minds and freak out a lot more at the Gizmo. But I guess what it's supposed to be is kind of like, it's just another really cute animal. It's like when you see a ferret for the first time, it's like really cute and it's adorable, and then after a while you get used to the fact that it's like a ferret. Then other people come over and go, oh my God, look at your ferret, it's so cute. So that was the thinking behind it, you know. It is based, people always ask me, like, what is, if Gizmo is based on something, and it is based on a Pekingese dog, slightly, but with different coloring. And one of the funny stories about it is that Chris Wallace kept trying to send different colors to Spielberg. First it was an all-white Gizmo, and Spielberg would be like this, no, I don't like it. I don't like it. They sent back something, other different color scheme, and Spielberg was like, yeah, I don't like it. And Spielberg sent it back something like, apparently it was like 7 or 8 times. And obviously people start getting frustrated when you keep sending the same thing back and making people do the same thing over and over again. So finally somebody said, what kind of dog does Spielberg have? Does he have a dog? And they're like, yeah, he's got a King Charles Cavalier Spaniel, or however you say that long-winded dog name, which is, of course, Gizmo's coloring. So they came and they colored it the King Charles Cavalier Spaniel color and sent it to Gizmo. Sent it to Spielberg, and Spielberg looked at it and was like, "That's perfect." Oh, that's pretty. Yeah, I knew him. I couldn't put my finger on it. And as soon as it was the color of his dog, he loved it, and it improved the thing. So it's a sort of a Pekingese King Charles Cavalier Spaniel mix with enormous ears, basically. So yeah, I still think Gizmo's one of the cutest things that's ever been in movies. I don't think there's anything that's cuter. There may be things that are as cute as Gizmo, but I don't think there's anything. Did anyone think of something that's cuter than Gizmo? See, look at that. I mean, it really kind of baffles you a little bit. You're like, cuter? No. He's pretty cute. Pretty darn cute, but that was only one question, sir. Did you have another biting criticism? I'm just kidding.
No, actually, I was just thinking how it's cool you're here, and I was just wondering what your favorite movie from the 80s is, since you're in one of the great ones.
What my favorite movie from the 80s is, once I started doing films in 1982, I hate to say it, it kind of, in a certain way, it kind of ruined movies for me, because instead of that magical experience where you don't know how it's made and it just washes over you and it's like a visceral emotional reaction, every movie I've ever seen since about 1982 has been like a really beautifully strung together collection of shots, with music. I'm just completely aware of the craft. And some movies are, the craft is so spellbinding, it doesn't take away from how amazing the movie is. The Exorcist is a perfect example of a movie. It's a perfect movie. Graduate's a perfect movie. There's all sorts of perfect movies out there. But Raiders of the Lost Ark is still just a seminal experience for me as a 17-year-old seeing that. That's probably the last movie I ever actually saw before I started doing this as a profession. So I put Raiders up there. I mean, come on, Indiana Jones. How do you beat that? That is just, And Back to the Future is an amazing movie too. I tried out for Marty McFly, so it's a little bittersweet. See that occasionally. That's part of the difficulty with 80s movies too, is, people are like, well, what about Platoon? Isn't that a great movie? And I'm like, well, after my 2-hour interview with Oliver Stone, where I thought I was going to get the part, yeah, I suppose it's a great movie. So, when you didn't get Breakfast Club, when you came this close to St. Elmo's Fire, when you came this close to so many other movies like that, it's kind of hard to go, yeah, it's great. But because I'm a competitive person, otherwise you wouldn't. You have to be somewhat of a competitive person, I think, to be at least even marginally successful. You know, even if you're just competitive with yourself, even if you're like, I can do better, or that draft I did is crap, I can do better than that. So Raiders is way up there. Blue Velvet is pretty crazy. Brilliant. Did I audition for? I did audition for Blue Velvet. Yeah, I met David Lynch, and he was just, you know, he was what you would think. He was like, hey, how are you? You know, with this giant pompadour, and I was like, great, yeah. You know, and the cool thing about David Lynch is you never read for him. He only interviewed you. You would just talk to him for 10 minutes, and then he cast everybody just on the basis of chatting with you for 10 minutes. So there were no sides, there were no scenes, there was no preparation. You were just going to meet Mr. Lynch and hoping for the best.
Much of a Blue Velvet fan as I am, I don't know how I would have reacted to seeing Billy Peltzer do some of the things that Jeffrey Wilmot does in that movie. Question for you. So it's interesting, as you were naming these films, it was like a string of Spielberg produced films. And I'm wondering, I mean, he had such a huge, obviously string on cinema in the 80s. How active do you remember him being on Gremlins? You're talking about obviously submitting the prototypes of the mask and stuff, but you know, it's been great to hear is that all your stories have been about Dante directing the film. But I'm wondering, how much do you remember Spielberg being there or having an active role?
Well, speaking of Indiana Jones, he was doing Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom at the time, the second one, and he was gone for the vast majority of the time. I would say he was gone probably for about 75%. But before he left, he said, "Listen, if you ever get bored, and if something, you know, if there were like technical problems, which boy was that? I mean, there were so many technical problems on Gremlins. A Gizmo would break, and there'd be like 5 hours off, or you'd break, and there'd be 9 hours off, and you just have to go and do things." So Spielberg was like, anytime you want to just come to my office and play my video games, you're welcome to, because he had arcade size. Remember, it's 1983. You know, he had a millipede machine, he had a pole position, he had a food fight, he had all of these great arcade games. So his office was maybe 5 minutes away from stage 16 where we were shooting. So he said, if you want to come over and play my video games anytime, do it. So I would do it, and I would, whenever there was a break, I guess I was 19, I didn't know any better, I didn't have any couth, I didn't have any tact, whatever, but I would just go straight over there. And I would just go, and I would start playing. I would go into his office sometimes, and I'd just sit in his chair. I seriously would. And there's like a sled that says Rosebud on it. I'm like, really? Is it? Was it? And it was his original sled from Citizen Kane. And he had the original bike, obviously from E.T. was there, you know. And his whole office was full of cool stuff. And then he finally came back from Sri Lanka. And one time I was there, I was playing pole position, and I heard a voice behind me, and he goes, "I'll play you." And I turn around, and it's him, and I was like, you know, because he's like an adult. I'm 19, I'm a kid, I'm a video game kid. This 35-year-old guy's gonna kick my butt for whatever. Yeah, right.
He did.
So I started playing pole position, and I did like pretty well and stuff like that. I turned it over to him, and he's like, 2 hours later, he's driving through like cities and things like that. I think I got like 1 million. He just decimated me at every single game there was. So I was kind of like Corey Feldman after the thing tried to bite his finger, and then he goes to the, and he's like, "Yeah, no, it's really good." And then of course there was the famous time when he showed up on the set, kind of unannounced, and every single person lost their mind. It was like the king was coming. So you just hear that it would ripple through the crew. People would go like this. "What'd you say?" "Spielberg's here." "What? Spielberg's here?" "Who said that?" "Spielberg's here, Spielberg's here, Spielberg's here, Spielberg's here." Oh my God, everybody start look busy, you know, everybody get up and start, you know, the boss is coming. It's actually kind of like when Daniel Clamp shows up in Gremlins 2. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's Mr. Clamp." Spielberg shows up, and I started getting nervous because I at the time, I actually this was the first time I had met him. I hadn't met him. My audition was with Phoebe Cates was on tape, and it was sent to Los Angeles, overnight on a plane on Federal Express. We didn't have that internet thing that you guys have now. I met him for the first time, and it was kind of nerve-wracking. And then the next day, he was on the set, and it was the scene where I kissed Phoebe, which of course came towards the end and had a lot of build-up, shall we say, in terms of anticipation for a young 19-year-old boy to kiss one of the most beautiful women on the planet. And thank you very much for that. Living the dream. So Joe goes, so here's what's going to happen. So Steven actually is going to direct this scene. Just for fun, he wants to direct the scene, the kissing scene with you and Phoebe. So Steven, it's up to you. So Spielberg comes up and he goes, I have this great idea. So here's the thing. You're just about to kiss Phoebe, and just as you do, Gizmo comes out of the bag and interrupts your guys' kiss. How do you like that? And I'm like this. That's great. Yeah, I love that idea. Where can I go smash some furniture? And so we tried it a couple of times, and actually, amazingly, Joe Dante was like, thank you, no. I think I'll just go with the regular kiss there. So, it's ridiculous. So they put the kiss back in, and I was like, they're like, Zach, you okay with it? I was like, yeah, I'll put it back in. You know, I was like, yes! Kiss back in. You're only 19 once, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Got anything? I'm trying to think of super difficult. Okay, how about this? Yeah, here's a super difficult one.
Show of hands.
So in the bar scene, there is a song by Peter Gabriel that's playing. What is the name of the song that's playing?
Make It Shine.
That is not correct.
In the bar. In the,
That's
sorry.
the Flash song, gentlemen. How could you get that wrong, JD? You've seen the movie 17,000 times. It's probably the only song by Peter Gabriel that never did anything in any way, shape, or form.
The song from the soundtrack.
It is the song and soundtrack. What's it called? There you go.
Right.
Out is the name of the song.
This is appropriate.
I was about to say, can you think of a more fitting ending for this evening? It's the duality of light and dark, good and evil, the binary nature of civilization.
Speaking of good and evil, was Clamp based on anybody?
Well, you know what's funny is everybody thinks that he's largely based on Trump, but he really isn't. He's partially based on Trump, for sure, because he's a New York real estate developer, but he's mostly based on Ted Turner, who colorizes the movies. There's a crack on colorizing the movies in there. He has his own television station, Clamp Cable News, that's CNN, where like Ted Turner created CNN. And Ted Turner apparently also had, when he ran all of those stations like TBS and TNT, so he had what was called the end of the world tape, where when the world was going, if they thought there was going to be nuclear Armageddon, he had a tape they put on and be like, well, it's been a great run, people. And now is the end of civilization. Like he actually had that at the station, and we spoofed that in Gremlins too. So I would say Clamp is about a third Trump and about 2/3 Ted Turner. But is he basically just supposed to be someone who was a mogul at the time?
And I have to ask, because it's come up a lot. I'm show of hands and don't be shy, because this has been something that's really fascinated me growing up too. Let's see the Gremlins 2 people. Just raise your hand up if you are a Gremlins 2 fanatic, better than the first one.
Yep.
Okay, there's about 6 of you.
As good as the first one.
Alright. Anyone not seen Gremlins 2? Check it out. It's very totally different. I mean, I get what you say, that it looks like the guy just said, no, I'm not going to recreate something that worked really well and go a whole different direction with it. You have Hulk Hogan literally screaming at the projectionist halfway through this film. That's basically, I think, sums up the vibe of it. And I wonder if it would have been a movie that, if it was anything else, if it was Ghoulies 3, if it was Munchies 2, if it was something else, Troll 3, it couldn't have been worse than Troll 2, nothing else. But if it wouldn't have been as painful, for me, because I remember being in the audience and just hating it. You know what I mean? And
hating it?
Hating it.
Yeah.
And I'm
Are you crazy?
I know a lot of people love it, but I'm wondering, because it was a Gremlins film, is that maybe why people are so disappointed with it? Not the ones that loved it, but in general, the critics and then ultimately
The franchise.
Well, I just think it's a simple version of you change the tone in a way that people didn't like, and maybe they would have. The odd thing about it is it tested very well. But take a look at something like Alien and Aliens, right? The first movie is a very kind of slow-moving, cerebral, haunted house movie almost, where the spaceship is the haunted house and the alien's the creature that keeps jumping out at you. The second James Cameron movie, Aliens, is like one of the great action movies of all time. That's got humor and everything, and it's amazing. So they're both alien related, but they're both great kind of takes, genres to do. The problem with the Gremlins 2, just for me, is it took too much of the scariness out of it. So that if you're going to see a Gremlins movie, you kind of at least partially think horror, but then you go there's no horror there. So like if you went to like a falafel store and all they sold was pizza, you'd be like, what are you doing? Where's the falafel? Well, why am I getting pizza when I wanted falafel? So that, I think, it kind of, it just went a little too far in a certain direction for a big chunk of the audience, really.
Yes.
This might be a dumb question, but as a child of the 80s, of VHS stores, of the video, Gremlins or Waxwork? As an actor, as your experience, as your time, Gremlins or Waxwork?
In what capacity?
Just the entire experience, right? Like, the doing it is different than the cultural acceptance in the world.
Sure. Well, I mean, the thing about Waxwork, which is, another movie I'm really, frankly, astonished that people, remember and like and revere in a much cultier way. I mean, it's very difficult to compare them because one was a A-list studio Spielberg, like crazy pedigree movie. And Waxwork, was kind of like the movie that never should have really worked at all, but just did because Anthony Hitchcock is a very interesting, naive, out there guy with a really vivid imagination and a tremendous salesman. I mean, I actually went to the meeting with Tony Hitchcock's at a restaurant in LA. It's
Hugo's.
And I remember walking in through the door going, how do I tell this guy he's really nice and he's got ability, but I'm not interested in doing this movie. I walked in to basically to be nice to him and to turn it down, and this guy just could sell anything to anybody. By the time he was over telling me his plan for the movie, who was going to be in it, this and that, and then he got my weak spy, showed me pictures of Michelle Johnson and everything like that. I was just like, this is ridiculous. I've got to do this movie, and he sold it in such an amazing way. Even though it had some dialogue problems, he said, "You can write your own dialogue. It's fine." Like, it was amazing. Any kind of objection I had, he's like, "That's not really an objection. We'll just fix it and make it what you want it to be." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So it was a really brilliant way of, I guess, negotiating, and that's how I ended up doing the movie. They were both really fun, experiences. It was a crazy blur to me. In a way, it all seemed to be accelerating, so quickly, and at the time it was heady stuff. It was very it was fun. It was a blast. I don't want to undersell it. Maybe it was difficult work. It was tremendous fun the entire time. It was hard work too, in terms of being long hours. It was a lot of fun. It was really good.
So Zach's going to be out at the table in the lobby for the evening. I don't want to give him too late of an evening, so maybe we have time for one more question, and then we're going to head out. And again, you can meet with Zach. Yes.
What is your favorite Christmas movie?
Nice.
What is my favorite Christmas movie? What is my favorite Christmas movie?
Is it Die Hard?
It's not a Christmas movie.
Die Hard. Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It's so funny. People are telling me that Gremlins isn't a Christmas movie. Gremlins isn't a Christmas movie. It tells you that Santa doesn't exist. I'm like, She says that Santa doesn't exist. That doesn't mean that Santa doesn't exist. Someone says God doesn't exist. Does that mean God doesn't exist? It means that person thinks that God doesn't exist. What's the matter with you? I get very, very passionate about existential discussions when it comes to Gremlins. Anyway, someone says, is Gremlins a Christmas movie? The fact of the matter is, the answer is very simple. When it came out in the summer of 1984, same day as Ghostbusters, June 8th, that was a good day at the cinema. When it came out, it was meant just to be a fun summer movie, and it was. But now it's 3 decades later, and people don't have that point of reference. Most people don't remember that Die Hard came out in August. It didn't come out in December. It was in July. Sorry. Watch it, young man. I will not take any guff from you. Okay, July. Came out in the summer of 1988, and was an unexpected summer blockbuster. A lot of people thought that Bruce Willis, who was known for moonlighting, couldn't make the jump to be an action hero, and people thought they were insane to pay him $5 million to do that movie. Now, of course, it seems like a brilliant investment because it's the star-making role. But anyway, both of those movies, now that they're shorn of their summerness and now just are seen on television, their Christmas theme predominates, and so for decades they have been seen by audiences on or around Christmas, and so they have morphed into a Christmas movie. So it doesn't matter what they were intended to be, it's what they now are, and they now are a Christmas movie. And I can tell you that I get 90% of insane traffic, everything, social media, blitzing, everything between December 1st and December 25th. And what's today's date? What am I doing? We're on the Christmas screens. It's not a Christmas movie, and yet I'm here. It's a biased logic. They're both Christmas movies. In fact, there's some website called the Daily Dot. I don't know what it is, but they picked the top 20 Christmas movies of all time. They picked Gremlins at number 1.
Yeah.
I think they're insane, but I'll take it, and I appreciate the number 1 vote. I think it's ridiculous, so I guess my favorite Christmas movie is, I don't know. Is it Lethal Weapon? It has to be something that I saw when I was growing up as a kid, because that's what sticks with you. I'm about to shock you all. I've never seen It's a Wonderful Life.
What?
The only thing I've ever seen is the clip that's in Gremlins. I swear to God, it's the only thing I've ever seen. And I've seen little snippets of it where he's hugging his kids and everything like that. And I love Jimmy Stewart. I just never got around to it. So it's kind of cool. Kind of weird. Is that weird?
You should check it out. It's fantastic.
If
you were in town, come see it here in 2 weeks.
Santa Claus versus the Martians, does that count? Santa Claus versus the Martians, that's good. Miracle on 34th Street, is that a Christmas movie?
Eyes Wide Shut?
No. Eyes Wide Shut is not a Christmas movie. I love Kubrick, that's way too strange to be a Christmas movie. My favorite part of the Christmas movie is the dead woman who's on camera nude for the first 15 minutes of the movie. And it's not a Christmas movie. Christmas Story? Yeah, that's cute. Yes. Yeah. I love Darren McGavin.
Christmas Vacation.
Christmas Vacation, that's a cute one too. Yeah. That's cute.
Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Silent Night, Deadly Night. So this is the only thing I'm just going to say. We're going to set up a little table outside. Anyone who would like to take a picture with me, obviously you're not obligated to take a picture with me, but if you'd like to do a camera phone picture with me, I'm totally happy doing that with each and every one of you, should you want that, completely free of charge. I have some merchandise too. If people want signed things, I'm going to probably charge a little bit for that, because usually we include that into the ticket, and we didn't do that today. The ticket is a normal price. If you want me to sign things, I'll give you a deeply discounted rate. But if you want just happy, fun camera pictures with me and Gizmo, I brought Gizmo with me too. Happy to take as many pictures with you as like. The one thing I would ask, one final thing I ask, just get your camera out and get it get it ready to go, turn in the right direction. Don't be the person who's like, here we're gonna, it just turned off for a second. Hold on, can you hold that for a minute? Because then it's gonna take hours, you know, as opposed to just like focus, click, and we're done, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. So thank you so much. I want to say thank you to you guys. I appreciate it so much for coming out and seeing a 35-year-old movie on a big screen and just coming and listening to me tell stories. And thank you to Logan and the beautiful Frida Theater. It's fantastic. It's been really great.
So another round of applause for Mr. Zach Galligan.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, folks, thanks so much for coming out. Again, we'll have Gremlins again tomorrow at 2, and this looks like the right audience to plug this to. We'll be announcing tomorrow, we're squeezing in a screening of Dolls from the 80s. I don't know if you have... First timers, what do you think? What are the first time people? Did you love it? Was it great? Yeah? Good. Right on. All right, very cool. So, without further ado, very excited to welcome today's special guest. You just saw him as Billy Peltzer, Mr. Zach Galligan.
Yeah.
This thing on? It's working. Beautiful. Hi.
Yay.
What's up, Orange County? Very exciting. Yes,
Welcome
sir.
back.
Thank you.
Very cool. So, are you...
Look at the little Gizmo.
Gizmo in the front row.
Gizmo's still the world's cutest thing. Or he's right up there. He's right up there. He's the cutest thing. Is there anything cuter than Gizmo? There might be things as cute as Gizmo. Is there anything really cuter than Gizmo?
Stripe.
Puppies?
Stripe. Nice to see the pro Gremlin contingent over there.
You mentioned that yesterday, and I was thinking, like, from movies, like, has there been a cuter movie character? I don't know if R2D2 counts.
I kind of like Lilo and Stitch, which was
Yeah.
what's the cute thing? Stitch is the cute one.
Yeah.
Well, kind of
I think that's cute, but it's animated, so it doesn't count. We're practical effects genius here in this movie. People don't really believe that. They're like, so they drew that thing in, right? I'm like, no, that's like a little cute robot that's right in front of you the entire time. What you see in the movie is what I saw, is what you get. It's pretty. I mean, the effects really are pretty remarkable by summer of 1983 standards when we shot it.
And it was all practical, for the most part, correct me at that point.
Every single shot in the movie is practical except for one. And that's the shot where you see like the stripe come into the town square and then all the other gremlins start jumping over him and going into the thing. That's a stop motion and claymation, basically, stop motion animation for that shot. But everything else is what they called animatronics, which is kind of a combination between very primitive robotics and cables and puppetry kind of mixed together.
So at the end of the film, the gentleman says, when you're ready, Mogwai will be waiting. Are you ready?
Well, I was ready in Gremlins 2, apparently. Gremlins 2, I was in New York. Phoebe and I living together, managed to close that deal. Move on to greener pastures, yeah. Had to give Judge Reinhold the boot. Gremlins 2, had to just steal the woman, caveman style, move to New York City and try and make that move.
Gremlins 2 came up a lot actually during last night's Q&A, and I asked the audience, as I'm curious tonight, all right, don't be shy. If you think Gremlins 2 was a better film than Gremlins 1, raise your hand. Be known today. There's about 4, here's what's funny, there were literally 4 yesterday as well. 4 per audience, that's pretty interesting.
It's a bold choice to make.
All right, I actually like to always open it up to the audience first. Sometimes you're sitting on a burning question. Yes, go ahead.
Well, first off, I'm a big fan of Waxwork.
Someone said a fan of Waxwork, which is another film I did in '88. Yes.
My question is, I heard that the speech Phoebe gave was a lot more darker and it had to be changed a little bit.
The gentleman said he heard that the speech that Phoebe Cates gives about her father being caught in the chimney was a lot darker originally. Kind of hard to imagine it being much darker than that. It's a pretty grim story. I think actually what you might be conflating two small things, which is the script in general was a lot darker. My mom in the original script goes up finds the pods hatch, and they cut her head off, and it rolls down the stairs. And then Spielberg got involved and read it, and Chris Columbus was like, "Isn't that a great scene?" Spielberg was like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen. Yeah, Mom's not going to get decapitated in the 40-minute mark. So yeah, we're going to get rid of that." And then Chris Columbus says, "Isn't it great that Gizmo dies halfway through the picture and turns into like a Gizmo, a gremlin?" And Spielberg was like, "Yeah, we need to have a conversation about that too. Gizmo's not going to die. No, he's going to turn into the sidekick of the hero you just met a good hour building up this adorable creature. You don't slaughter it halfway through the picture. You keep him as a sidekick." And Chris Columbus was like, "Oh, wow, that's a great idea." So that's how you ended up with me and Giz being best friends instead of me mourning his death at the 62-minute mark of the movie. Going, "I loved him." We don't want to see it. It's dark enough as it is. So what's interesting about the Phoebe Cates speech is, and I actually have not read this draft, so I don't know. It was for somebody else. It was for another character. And then they looked at the Kate Berenger character. They're like, she really doesn't do anything except kind of look pretty and be nice and sort of be like your romantic interest. We got to give her a backstory, otherwise she has no reason really for existing. So they took that great kind of sick joke and grafted it onto her character. There are a couple of sloppy things really in the Gremlins script, like, why is my best friend 11? What is that about? Why are we hanging out together up in my attic looking at comics? For real? And the point is, what happened was that Billy Peltzer was originally supposed to be 12. And then they were like, you can't really have a good, relationship like I have with Phoebe when you're 12, you know what I mean? So they aged me up to 19, right? I'm fresh out of high school, I'm helping support my family, I'm working in a bank, taking a kind of a grunty job, labor job, just to support my family, a good solid white collar job. But they didn't, for whatever reason, they didn't change the character of Pete. He's still 11. So I'm hanging out with Corey Feldman. It was like, at the time, like 3 feet tall. I'm like, what's going on here? So I don't know why they just didn't. If you notice, I don't have a single friend my age except for Phoebe in the entire movie. Where are all the 19-year-olds in Kingston Falls? It's like they didn't exist. So it's very, there's a couple little peculiar things in there.
By the time you got involved, though, the script changes had been made, right? You weren't part of the dark film that got lighter as it went along, or?
Never even heard about the dark film until probably 10 years after the first movie. It doesn't surprise me that it started out as a horror movie and then Spielberg took it and Spielbergized it and made it more, just family-friendly, cute creatures, E.T., let's have a good time, etc.
That's the thing that, for those of you who are my age, you might remember that there was a day before PG-13. And movies like this were kind of responsible for that. And
this movie is single-handedly responsible for that.
And Indiana Jones.
And Indiana Jones. Temple of Doom a little bit, but then Gremlins was just like, Temple of Doom was like, that heart-beating scene, that was very intense for young people. Like, I disapprove of that. And then the next week or 2 weeks later, it was like, Gremlin in the microwave, what? This is an outrage! And the kitchen scene with Frances Lee McCain, that's a very, there was a guy that was doing the live stream in the back, he was, in his early 30s, he'd never seen the movie before, and he was watching the thing, and he turned to me during the scene with Frances Lee McCain, and he goes, this movie's dark. I was like, yeah. I was like, that's violent. I was like, yeah, it is. It's the whole movie is kind of a sick joke, really. Sure. It's designed deliberately to lull you into a feeling of false security. Oh, I'm in this beautiful town, and everyone's so nice, except for that horrible Deagle woman, whatever. And everything's so great, and Gizmo's so cute, and the dad is so great, and what's happening? Suddenly, out of nowhere, it just turns really ugly really fast, and that's all by design.
But it's not like necessarily mean-spirited. I think of a movie like Mars Attacks, where you're introduced to all of these amazing actors and actresses who have this amazing cast, and then one by one they're picked off in these horrible ways, and mutilated, turning, And it's a dark film, and it's fun, but it's really mean-spirited. And I feel like with this one, it's got that same idea. It's jovial and colorful, and then it gets dark, but the sweetness never really goes away. There's this pervasive sense of like, what would happen if hell descended on Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life? I mean, literally, and it ends sweet. I mean, it ends bittersweet for everything you just saw, but it does turn, and for me, it was always Barney hanging by the lights. That was, I remember as a young kid just being totally disturbed by suddenly we cut to this dog hanging on the lights. And I don't know about anyone out there, maybe the new people, but I remember when I first saw it, I remember this clearly, I thought the dog was dead in just that first shot. And then you realize he's not, but I was so like, oh my God. And then it just went from there, the teacher with the, on the floor, and then Mrs. Deagle flying out the window. Curious about the dog up on the lights. How did they, do you remember, were you there when they shot that? Any stories there?
Well, sure, because I take him down. So if I wasn't there, it would be rather remarkable, Houdini-like feat filming him. But so what happened is, this is really kind of interesting, and I don't think I've talked about this very much. The dog, Barney, who's played by an actual dog named Mushroom, who's just one of the great canines. I personally, Joe Dante and I have talked about this at length. We really think it's one of the top canine performances in all of movies still. The dog, if you watch the dog is perfect in every single shot. He never does a single thing wrong. He does some special things. You have to go back and watch the movie really closely. When I get in bed with Gizmo and my dog, the first night I get him, Gizmo yawns, the dog yawns. The dog sees Gizmo yawn and sympathetically yawns with the Gizmo. You're like, what the? That's crazy. Like, the dog's in the moment. The dog is literally in the moment. So, since there are animal lovers here, raise your hand if you're an animal lover. Yeah, of course. I mean, come on. People who hate animals, I dare you to raise your hand. If you loathe digest animals, raise your hand. Hate ice cream pizza, raise your hand. So I'm an animal lover. Most people are animal lovers. And so what they did was, when I first got there, it was probably about 10 days before we started shooting, and they were like, we're going to do a little bit of rehearsal, but not too much. But most of the time, you have to come in for a few hours a day to do stuff with the dog. I go, what? They go, well, we want you to have a believable relationship with the dog. It's supposed to be your dog. So I want you to spend a couple hours a day with Mushroom, and you guys, kind of bond. I go, okay, cool, what do we do? So I throw a ball with the dog and give him a treat every time. Dog, ball, treat, this and that. Pet him a lot, go walking around. I'd walk around, take him off the leash, throw balls in the field, more treats. 2 hours a day, every day for like 10 days. But after 10 days, the dog was obsessed with me. Obsessed with me. It's like, oh, it's the guy who throws the ball with the treats. Loved me, was totally into it. So we would do all kinds of stuff. So it came time to do this stunt, to get back to your question. So when they did it, I said, isn't that, how are you going to do this? I mean, you're not going to string them up to the lights. They're like, no. There's going to be a kind of a harness that's essentially the exact same color as the dog's fur, so that you won't be able to see it. And anyway, he's not going to do it. Mushroom's not going to do it. His sister's going to do it. I go, are you telling me you're bringing in this stunt puppy? And they said, yeah, his sister does the stunts. He does the regular stuff. I said, you're making this up. No. So I can't remember what unfortunately, this is the only day I saw her, because I think this is the only stunt she did. She came in, and she was exactly like her brother, except she was, for whatever reason, a little heavier. She was maybe 5 pounds heavier. So they put the harness on her, so it's a different dog for when they're hanging. And so what they did was they had a handler, a trainer there, and they strung the dog up, they put it in the lights, but it's really attached to a harness, but it's incredibly convincing. The harness blends in with the fur. And they had the handler stand there, and they would, go, okay, scene 47A, take one marker, clack, and Joe Dante would go, and action, and the person would run away, like run out of film, and they would go, and open the door. So from the second the person cleared frame, I opened and ran out and got the dog down. So the dog dangled for between 4 and 7 seconds, it was not long. But it was like, I suppose you could argue it was maybe not painful, but like a little uncomfortable for the dog to hang in the harness. But she got mad treats and tuna and everything afterwards, and was completely happy. And so that's why that's a completely separate shot with a completely different dog. Stunt puppy.
Movie magic. Any questions? Yes, back there.
What was it like drawing
Well, what was it like drawing in front of Chuck Jones? Very observant gentleman there picked out that Chuck Jones, the classic creator of Roadrunner and Daffy Duck and all sorts of amazing Looney Tunes cartoons, who played my art teacher in a small cameo. He's sitting next to me in the bar when I'm doing the Deagle on the head of the dragon thing. And he goes, "Wow, you're really doing great there, Bill." And I'm like, "Thanks, Mr. Jones," throwing his name in there for people like that. He was really nervous because he's not an actor. And when you get most non-actors in front of the camera, even if they have to just stand there, they're like, "What am I going to do? I'm going to look stupid. You know, you're going to be fine." He had 2 lines, so that was like, that was like reciting War and Peace for him. He was completely nervous. But what they did was he did that drawing, and I just took my pen and went like, so I did like a couple of little lines in it, and he did 99.99% of the drawing. So I had no nervousness drawing on Chuck Jones' drawing in front of Chuck Jones. So he was super cool, he was nice. And he gave me, I told this story last night, I'll tell a shorter version, he gave me we had a big break for some problem, mechanical problem or something like this. There was a 20-minute break for maybe it was lighting or something like that. And during the time, I asked him about the Roadrunner, because the Roadrunner was always at Wile E. Coyote. That was my favorite cartoon growing up, period. Even more than Bugs Bunny, although I love Bugs. Loved the Roadrunner. So I asked him how he came up with it, this and that. And as he did that, he took out a cocktail napkin and he drew me an original Roadrunner drawing. He gave it to me in the cocktail napkin. I promptly put it in my jeans where it got washed the next day. So yeah, no Chuck Jones for me. Yeah. It's painful. It's painful to think about. I had an original thing. But luckily at the time there was no eBay, so I didn't really care. I was kind of like, well, what would I have done with it other than put it on the wall? I'm 19. What do I know? I don't know.
Was that Dante sort of putting in, let's say, icons of the industries or the genres that he was basically emulating with Gremlins by having like Chuck Jones, who created Looney Tunes, and Spielberg's got a cameo. We've got Dick Miller?
Yeah.
Who's a famous effects artist. Was it his way of getting these people together and say this film is a zany cartoon, essentially, that's a big budget horror film, kind of all the different genres that were being mashed together, and peppering it with these heroes of those genres? Or did he have a friendship with Chuck Jones? Do you remember how Chuck Jones was invited to the table for this particular movie?
Well, I think it was sort of the beginning of, if you look at Joe Dante's work, a lot of it is just either horror or cartoons, or both mixed together. And it kind of starts with Twilight Zone, the movie, which has a very cartoony feel to it, and Gremlins has more of a cartoony feel, and then obviously it reaches its absolute zenith in Gremlins 2, which is essentially a giant Mad magazine come to life with more things crammed into the frame. And it even opens with the Looney Tunes Chuck Jones cartoon. So it's really just the natural progression. But Joe Dante, on top of that, is a film historian and a film lover, and really a lover of old-time actors too, which is one of the reasons why he's so enamored of Dick Miller, although obviously he became very good friends with Dick Miller as well, Kevin McCarthy also. And I think he saw people like Scott Brady, who plays the sheriff, and he's like, this is Scott Brady from Johnny Guitar, like back in the 50s, the guy was like a legend, and he was like a really successful actor, and he's like, why aren't these great actors getting work? So it's kind of the same impulse that Quentin Tarantino has, when Tarantino takes people like Michael Parks, Robert Forster in Jackie Brown, Lawrence Tierney in Reservoir Dogs. He takes people who are big, who aren't working anymore, and going, this is David Carradine is the best best example in Kill Bill, and say, these people are super talented, why aren't they working? They should be working. And he forces Hollywood to go, oh yeah, they're really good, they should be working. Because Hollywood doesn't know or care or have really any respect for actors, unless of course they make tons of money. Then they have a handful of exceptions. So yeah, there you go. He just said the same thing with Travolta. Travolta was on the shelf from 1987 to like 1993, and Quentin Tarantino was like, this is John Travolta from Blowout, one of the greatest movies ever. You have to use this man. And then they used him and it was like, Travolta's a genius. They don't know. They don't care. They just don't care.
Anything from the audience? Yes.
Absolutely. Very nicely done. The woman said in the beginning when I go, hey, Dr. Moreau, is that a nod to H.G. Wells? Of course, yeah, the island of Dr. Moreau. So the local GP that happens to be walking through Kingston Falls is named Dr. Moreau. I mean, what are the odds? Yeah, so all of those people, I mean, there's the list goes on. Harry Andrews, who plays my boss at the bank, is a great character actor. Harry Carey Jr. was from all the John Ford westerns, like The Searchers and stuff like that. He's the one who says, that'll do it, you know, when they go put him in the spit dryer in high heat. And obviously Polly Holliday is one massive tribute to Margaret Hamilton in The Wizard of Oz, all the way down to her red shoes. I was watching the movie last night, probably for the first time in 10 minutes, no, for the first time in like probably 2 or 3 years. And I was really, I'm always impressed by the level of commitment that Polly Holliday does to her part. Because when she goes outside to throw water on what she thinks are kids who are Christmas carolers, and it's actually Gremlins, and she goes inside, she starts freaking out, it makes me uncomfortable. She's so terrified, legitimately terrified. And she really thinks that demons are coming to, like, for her for a reckoning. She's so scared and so terrified. I actually find it, the rawness of her emotion, I find it kind of unsettling now as an adult. I'm like, oh my God, she's really abjectly terrified, like in a really believable way. It's actually not even that funny for me. It's funny when she dies, ironically. I find her murder hilarious, but I don't find her fear hilarious.
And that scene with the carolers is one of many scenes that I just think is funny because of the absurdity of these creatures have been alive for a few hours, maybe. They've somehow seen Flashdance. They've seen a flasher. Yeah. They've seen all these cultural references, Sinatra. They somehow, in their transformation from Black White to Gremlin, absorbed the pop consciousness of American people. And it's just that unspoken, you know, how do they know all this stuff? It's hilarious that they just suddenly do.
Well, but seriously, like, look at nature. You know, a deer comes out of the womb, or a baby deer, and it knows how to, within an hour, it knows how to run and knows how to avoid this thing. And I mean, there's like little packets, instruction guides, that the creatures and animals are born with in order to survive. That we don't know how that happens. If you go, it's instinct. Well, it's more than instinct. It's some kind of like instruction booklet. As soon as you're born, don't do this, do that. Stay away from that thing with huge teeth. You know, and that's what the Gremlins have too. They're like, Flashdance is a necessary piece of film that you should be aware of. Jennifer Beals' leggings are recommended legwear.
Anything from the audience? Yes.
Because you said that you guys use like robotics in order to do all the like Gremlin stuff. Were there any like really weird problems that you had with that?
She wanted to know if there were any problems involved with the robotics. Where do I start? I mean, do we have 10 hours to talk about all the problems? I mean, everything that could go wrong would go wrong. Probably the most, glaring example was when we did the scene where my dad gives me the initial Gizmo and we opened the box, the tiny box for the first time. The dog Mushroom was losing his mind. He thought Gizmo was real. He thought the creature was a real creature. You can see it. The line where I go, come on, Barn, be a good dog. That's just an ad lib because I'm trying to stay in character. And I almost called him Mushroom. And I was like, come on, Barn, be a good dog, because the dog was driving me nuts. I'm trying to do the scene here, and the dog's in the way, but it's believable, and they kept it in thing. And on one of the takes, the dog just got past me and stepped on Gizmo's head and ripped his ear off. So they just like, it ripped off, and it was like, and like, you know, it had like cogs and things. And because Gizmo, when I worked with him, there was no, Howie Mandel hadn't done any adorable, cute voices. There were no, he didn't talk. You know, he was just a mechanical thing, so he would basically look up at me and he would just go, because he made little clicking and whirring mechanical sounds, which were kind of adorable in their own way. So when his ear got ripped off, Chris Wallace, who was only 28 at the time, the effects guy, comes over, and Joe Dante was very, very calm, cool, and relaxed. Like, he knew right from the beginning, it's all about expectations. He knew that there would be tons of mistakes, So he was very much like, so, is this a huge mistake now or just a moderate mistake now? Like, he knew it was going to happen, so he wasn't one of these people who was like, what, there's a problem? Of course there's a problem. It's a brand new technology that's practically being invented, like, on a day-to-day basis. Like, we were literally right on that like I did anything. They were literally on the cutting edge of every single conceivable thing that you could do at the time. So Willis would come over and go, oh dear, oh no, my, oh wow, oh dear. Stop complaining, Willis, just tell me how long it's going to be, is what Joe Dante would say. And Willis would be like, I don't know, like 6, maybe 7 hours. And so I had a 6 or 7 hour break. So I would eventually just drag Corey Feldman over to Spielberg's office and beat him relentlessly at Food Fight, which was an arcade game. I'd just pound him relentlessly at Food Fight. He'd be like, why can't I win? I'm like, because I'm better than you. And I just, that's what I thought that would be good for our relationship, where I would just never let him win a game.
So was Billy Peltzer one of those roles where they were just talking to hundreds of, like, tell me about the casting process and how you came to learn about the part and ultimately get the part?
Well, what's so frustrating about it is it's like one of the easiest parts I ever got, you know, and now you're sort of like, how do I do that again, you know? They're like, but there was no real magic formula to it. I think they were just looking for somebody, it's so ironic, they were looking for a very sort of prototypical Midwestern everyman boy, kind of young Jimmy Stewart-ish. You know, Tom Hanks kind of became the prototype for that later, but that sort of Midwestern thing, which is so funny because I'm from Manhattan. I haven't even been to the Midwest, you know. But it was, I had the prep school thing, which was the gentleness that they were looking for. They were looking for kind of the gentle quality to Billy because he loves his mom, and he loves his girlfriend, and he loves his dog, and he's just supposed to be from Anytown, USA. I mean, what state is Kingston Falls in? They know, they never tell you. They never tell you where it's supposed to be, like Indiana, Ohio, somewhere in the Midwest.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, maybe. It's snowy, so it's got to be kind of more north, right? It's Christmas, it's already snowing, so it's not going to be, you know, Arkansas or something like that. It's too warm. So what happened was they called me in. I had just done a movie called Nothing Lasts Forever for MGM, which never got released, so the title was rather appropriate. And I had a little heat on me because I was the lead in the movie. It also had appearances by Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and a few other people pre-Ghostbusters, post-Saturday Night Live. And so there was a little bit of buzz about that movie, so I got put on the lists with everybody else at the time who was, you know, trying out for everything in New York. So that would have been, you know, the New York group that I was grouped with was like Matthew Broderick, Kevin Bacon, Matthew Modine, Tom Cruise from New Jersey. I tried out for a movie that Tom Cruise did called Losing It, where about losing your virginity, going down to Tijuana. You can actually rent that movie, believe it or not. And like I auditioned with Cruise for that when he was still sort of like very, you know, and actually, I got down to the wire for Risky Business too. So I was very, very close to a lot of the, you know, there was really only about 10 or 12 people in 1982 or 83 that were really even remotely being considered for parts like that. And then there was the LA group of people that you would see, which of course was, you know, like Emilio Estevez and Rob Lowe and all of the kind of people from The Outsiders. So C. Thomas Howell, who was in E.T. and stuff like that, Ralph Macchio. So you had the LA contingent, you had the New York contingent, and my guess is they saw everybody. They saw everybody for everything. Ironically, you know who else also I found out read for Billy Peltzer? He was deemed too old at the time, but Kevin Costner, too. He was kind of bubbling, but he was a good 5 years older. And of course, one of the really good bits of the trivia is that Gerald, who's played by Judge Reinhold, was originally going to go to Tom Hanks, but when they put me next to Tom Hanks, we have the same hairstyle. We looked very similar at the time. So they're like, we can't have Billy and Gerald look so identical. So the Tom Hanks actually was out. He was out. And that's one of the reasons why Joe Dante wanted to work with Tom Hanks on The Burbs, and which they eventually did, because they were supposed to work together on Gremlins, but they just felt that and that happens a lot of the times where actors are like, you're the best person for the part, but you're just too similar to someone else who's already been cast. You know, there was even some talk that maybe Phoebe and I shouldn't be boyfriend and girlfriend because we both have dark hair, and that maybe we look like brother and sister. I was like, you insane? How many same hair color couples are there on the planet? I mean, millions. It's ridiculous. So, I mean, you know, people are it's very odd. But, so I went in, I read, and then I came back and I read for Mike Fennell. And then the final audition that we had was for Mike Fennell and Joe Dante. Joe had missed the day before because he was sick from flying from LA. He was not a good flyer. And so it was, as luck would have it, I went into the audition and they paired me with Phoebe Cates, who I had met before on a couple of other things that I'd gone up for and had actually been paired with before. Since you're a film buff, I assume a lot of other people are film buffs. We tried out for the Paul Mazursky movie Tempest with John Cassavetes, Jenna Rollins, and the parts eventually went to Molly Ringwald and Sam Robards, rather than Phoebe and myself. So there went my vacation into Greek Isles. But so we did Gremlins instead. We got paired together, and I had a massive crush on her at the time. She barely knew I existed, and it was just perfect because that's sort of the way the relationship in the movie kind of is. She's kind of aware of me. She thinks I'm kind of cute, but you know, I've watched the scene where I ask her out on a date and stuff like that. It's almost like she's doing me a favor, isn't it? Just like, yeah, I'll go. You're the only person who's 20 years old and kicks and balls. So I'm the only game in town, so I mean, I guess I could stay home and play Nintendo, or I could go out on a date with you.
Fast Times was before this.
Fast Times was before this, and that was one of the most fun things about doing Gremlins with Phoebe, was because I don't know if you know this, but there's a scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High where there's a tiny bit of nudity with Phoebe Cates, and it kind of made her an international superstar overnight, and I still have people coming up to me going, "You worked with Phoebe Cates?" Like that. I was like, "Yes, calm down, let go of the sweater." And so guys would see her. Maybe they would talk to me first, like we'd be at a you know, like I remember one time we were at the Hamburger Hamlet up in Los Angeles in Westwood, and some guy came up and was like, "Dude, can you like hand me the napkin, bro?" Something like that. I was like, "Sure, here you go." And he was like, "Thanks." And he'd look over and he'd see Phoebe, and he'd realize that Phoebe was like the girl from Fast Times. He'd be like, "Cool, hey, how are you?" "Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god, it's you, dude!" And he would start trembling and freaking out and then losing his mind. I was like, "Wow, that is some crazy power of celebrity." Guys would lose remember we were in Westwood, so it's a college that people lose their minds over her. And I had to sit there going like, "Yeah, you know, she's fine, she's cool, she's good, you know, she's nice, she's the Fever, she's the Phoebes. She's great," but inside I'm like, "Oh my god, she's so pretty."
Towards the end, was there a suspense period where it was like, it's okay, it's either going to be you or somebody else? Except for the last two, or was it pretty much, they saw you, they liked you, you're in?
I got it shockingly quickly. Like to this day, I still don't know why it just kind of fell together so perfectly. But I do remember that they called me at one point and they said, "Listen, it's down to 2 people, and you really get to pick, you know." And I was like, "Really? Who's it down to?" And they're like, "Well, it's Phoebe Cates, or there's this other actress. I don't know if you're familiar with her. Her name's Diane Lane." I said, "Yeah, I know Diane Lane. Yeah. I just had seen her in, I'd seen promotional stills for a movie she did with Michael Pare called Streets of Fire. And she was drop dead, I wouldn't even say is drop dead gorgeous." And I was like, it was just a choice between, I don't know what, heaven and heaven. And so I was just like, and so what I thought was, I made a calculation, which is, I know Phoebe, and I know, I've met her, and I knew she was a great person. I didn't know what kind of person Diane Lane was, and for all I knew, maybe she wasn't, and you know, maybe we wouldn't get along at all. I already knew that it got along with you, so I went with the devil you know, so to speak, as opposed to the devil that you didn't know. So that's why I basically, I don't know whether I really picked Phoebe or not, but I made it known that she was my preference, and I think it was their preference too, because she was really one of the nicest people that I've met, in my career.
I'll tell you a question from the audience in a second, but I have one question first, which is there's this ongoing discussion we talked about a little bit last night as to what makes a Christmas movie and what doesn't. So the big one obviously is Die Hard. We believe it's a Christmas. We play it every Christmas. It's coming up in a week, and we always play Die Hard. We always play Gremlins. But then you've got the folks, and they just love to, it's one of those things people love to argue about on the internet. It's not a Christmas movie. It is. In your opinion, is Gremlins a Christmas movie? And what constitutes a Christmas movie?
Well, I would, it's a super simple answer is Gremlins is a Christmas movie now. I mean, it has become one. It is morphed into one. It is transformed into one. So it doesn't really matter what the movie was, intended to be. I mean, I suppose example here is like Rocky Horror Picture Show. When they did that, they didn't think it was going to be like, oh, the most successful midnight movie of all time. They just made a musical. It was supposed to be an edgy musical, turned into the most successful midnight movie of all time. So Gremlins came out like Die Hard did in the summer, and it was meant to be a summer blockbuster, and they did, in fact, bust many blocks in their day. And I always wonder, what does a blockbuster mean? Does that mean the lines went around the blocks and busted the block? Is that, or just, I don't know. Anyway, so it was a summer movie, it was successful, and then, 30 years has transpired. So in the 30 years, people have forgotten that it came out in the summer, and now it's just shown on television. It has a Christmas theme, so people very sensibly and logically say it's a Christmas movie. So for basically the last 2 decades, Gremlins has slowly but surely morphed into an extremely reliable December paycheck for me. Sorry, Christmas movie. And it has taken on a sort of second life, largely due to the internet. And speaking of reaching its zenith, this website, The Daily Dot, just did their 25 or 30 best Christmas movies of all time. They posted their list about a week ago, and Gremlins came in at number 1. Made it to the top, top of the world. Jimmy Cagney would be
Die Hard on that list?
What'd you say?
Die Hard on that list?
Die Hard was absolutely on that list. It was disappointingly at like 16th. I was like, 16th? What are you talking about? Die Hard's an amazing movie.
For those of you who don't know, watch Die Hard again if you don't know what we're talking about. You can just count the Christmas references. It's in the music. His wife's name is Holly. It's one thing after another. But any other questions? Yes, right over here.
At the beginning of the movie, Billy's dad says something like, everyone has a story and this is mine. So I always wondered, is that like left over from a draft where he was like...
Yeah, absolutely. Why is it Hoyt Axton's story? He's like on the road for 90% of it. I'm like, you got a story. I got the story here, buddy guy. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, like, why is he the omniscient narrator kind of thing like that when he misses 7? How does he know what happens in the department store? He shows up at the end. Who wrote this thing? Yeah, so it don't make a lot of sense. Logan was going on about when is it not after midnight, which of course we address endlessly in Gremlins too. And make fun of the fact that that particular rule makes absolutely no sense in any conceivable way. There's absolutely, and the nice thing about it is there's no way not to break the rules so that the movie just starts getting cranked up a little earlier than normally it would.
Just let it start.
Just let it, exactly. I mean, you not feed it? How do you not feed the thing? It's terrible.
And yes, right over here in the middle.
Yeah, did you have, working on Gremlins 1 and 2, did you have a preferred movie or filming experience? And in retrospect, do you have a favorite?
The old, do I have a Gremlins 1 or 2? I'm a Gremlins 1 guy all the way. I've said this many times. It might have something to do with the fact that I'm in practically every frame. No. I mean, my part is, you can argue, is a bit better in Gremlins 1. In Gremlins 2, there's a real sore spot for me from Gremlins 1, actually, and that is that, and Die Hard, I should say Die Hard because that's a movie, but hardcore Gremlins fans know this, and that is that when we shot the movie, I'm the one that goes over to the shade, pulls the shade up, the shade comes up and kills the stripe, which is why I'm standing right next to the shade. But what they did was they went in and they're like, Gizmo doesn't really have like a big payoff. So they did the whole, after I had left, they did the whole get in the pink car, go up the shovel, go into the thing, run over and pull the shade. And when I saw it, I was like this, what the heck? What, are you kidding me? Oh my God, there's a whole little sequence that's cut out too where I'm in the greenhouse and behind the potted plants, he's shooting and the potted plants are exploding and I run down the thing and I do this, my own stunts, just flip over the top of the thing and I do this barrel roll and I get up and I pull the thing and I kill that thing and I'm heroic Billy Peltzer from Pigs and Falls. What's going on here? And I actually, rather foolishly, confronted Joe Dante about it and I was like, what the heck, what is that? And he looked at me very calmly and he goes, the name of the movie is Gremlins, not Billy Peltzer's Adventures in Kingston Falls. To which I said, point taken. But when we got to Gremlins 2, I was like this. I am still pissed. I want to kill the Gremlins in Gremlins 2. You better have me kill the Gremlins in Gremlins 2, which is why I grabbed the phone, spoiler alert, and fry all of the Gremlins in the lobby of Clamp Tower in Gremlins 2 because that was robbed. It was robbed. It was robbed of my victory in Gremlins 1, and I needed for makeup death of Gremlins in Gremlins 2.
I have time for two more. Yes, Frida.
Did it feel like to have like all the blood on you, especially the trickling down your arm?
What did it feel like to be covered in blood, especially to have an arrow pierced into my arm? Well, actually, the arrow gag. Oh, this is actually quite might be surprising to some of you. That whole sequence in the department store, which of course is dealt with effects, was still very painful. When they shoot the tennis ball into my back with the thing like that, that hurt. And when you see me grab my back, I'm in pain. And then there's another kind of thing where the gremlin throws the box at me and I swing the bat rather lamely and I tumble back into a breakaway shelf. Well, the breakaway shelf didn't really break away all that much. So I went into it and shelf 1 went down, shelf 2 went down, and shelf 3 did not. So the bottom of my spine sort of went down, 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 and then hit like what felt like a rock. So I reached down and I grabbed my back. That's all real too. At the time too, I had, for what I still to this day don't know how I caught it, but I had pink eye in that scene, so I was already kind of uncomfortable at the time. I did this scene with the baseball bat and the chainsaw. That's a real chainsaw blade cutting through the bat. That's why you see the fragments of the wood going in my eyes, because it's a real Louisville Slugger and real blade. And I said to the special effects guy came up to me and he goes, yeah, so we're setting up the blade like this. We got it locked, pretty nice. So when you hold the bat, don't go like this and don't go like that. And I go, why not? He goes, maybe you could lose a finger. But you'll be good. Just hold it steady. You'll be good. All right, let's go. Let's do this thing. And I was like, what the? But you know, this is back in 1983 where litigation really hadn't come into full flower.
This is before Twilight Zone the movie, right?
Well, no, it's after Twilight Zone the movie.
So you
would thought that they would have like learned their lesson. I mean, another story that I tell very briefly is when we blow up the movie theater. You know, I blew up the movie theater, and initially they had us in front of the car, and so I said to the special effect, one of the special effects guys, I said, "So how big is this explosion going to be?" And he goes, "It's packed in there pretty good." And I go, "Okay, but how big is it going to be? Like, is it going to be? I mean, I'm a good 50, 60 yards away from the theater. Am I going to feel it?" He goes, "You should." And so Jordan actually heard that, and he goes, "I'm going to reblock the scene," and he put me and Phoebe behind the car. So if things went poorly, we could literally duck behind the car. So they're like, "Listen, here's the deal. We only, as you can imagine, probably don't have to say that to you guys, but we only have one take for this. It's we're one and done. We're not going to blow up the theater multiple times." And it was the last shot of the night. They always save, you know, diabolically dangerous, horrible, life-threatening things for the last shot of the night in case something goes terribly wrong. So they said, so you run and you come and this and that. They had one camera here, so they caught us running and getting behind the car, and then they had another camera in the bushes that caught our close-up of the explosion itself. So they said we did it once. So Phoebe and I are excited. We're kind of nervous. We're standing close to the hotel. Actually, it felt kind of bad standing close to the hotel. It was wired with massive amounts of explosives. You don't want to go near anything that's like a bomb. You want to stay as far away from it as possible. We go, action! You know, so their hearts are pounding, run behind the car and kind of peek over the thing, and they go, hit it, you know, or fire in the hole, and they detonate it. And the explosion is deafening. And the flame, there's kind of like a big burst of just flame and heat came, and I thought my eyebrows had been singed. It was really, really hot, and so the reaction, and just massive bits of stuff were flying hundreds of feet up in the air, raining everywhere. We found out the next day, because we were at the Universal Studios lot, right, where they shot Back to the Future for that part. About a mile and a half away, you can still see it. It's called the Black Tower. It's the Universal building. Broke about 7 or 8 windows. The shock of the explosion. So people came into their office the next morning, just sheets of broken glass, and the wind blowing all the papers off their desk because their window had been completely blown out. We shot at 5:15 in the morning. I had no idea what the neighbors thought or anything like fire car alarms going off and everything like that. But they basically just kind of like, we'll just pack it up and let it go. Hope for the best. I was like, wow, you know, I mean, it did not inspire a lot of confidence, I gotta tell you.
Worth it. Totally worth it. Yes.
Given how much the film is such a classic today, how iconic it's become, at the time of making the film, did any of you ever foresee what a classic this film would be to this day?
Did anyone involved, the question is, did anyone involved in the film foresee the longevity and the sort of classic, according to him, classic status of the movie? No. I think people thought that it would, actually, you know what's really interesting? We did a 30th anniversary thing for Empire Magazine, where they got myself and Dick Miller and Rick Baker from Gremlins 2 and Chris Wayless and Joe Dante together, and I think Mike Fennell, and we sat down and we reminisced about the movie, you know, the 30 years later, kind of thing like that. And apparently, I felt really stupid. Apparently, I was the only person involved in the movie who actually thought the movie was going to be a hit. And I just did a math equation where I was like, well, E.T. is the most successful movie ever made. This is Spielberg's follow-up to E.T. If it even does 1/10 the business that E.T. did, it'll make $100 million, therefore, success. Even if it does 90% less business than E.T., it will be a hit. Which it did. It made like $148 million in 1984 dollars, which is like $320 million now. So it was a big hit. But nobody would ever foresee that I would be in Santa Ana 34 years later doing Christmas screenings of what's now sort of like the 80s version of The Wizard of Oz, or The Lizard of Oz from hell. It's a Wonderful Wizard of Oz from hell. Nobody knew that it was. If you had told me at the time that I'd still be talking about this movie 3.5 decades later, I would have told you you needed your head examined.
Well, we're glad to have you in Santa Ana. Everyone give Zach Galligan.
Yeah.
One final thing, just so you know, I'm going to be out in the lobby and be selling some merch if people want it. If you just simply would like a camera phone picture with me, I don't know why you would, but if you would like a picture with me and Gizmo in the lobby, yeah, that's completely free of charge. And obviously some of the merch is actually for sale, but if you'd like, I'm going to have a table out there. You can come by and have a cuddle with me and Giz, get a picture for Facebook or Instagram or whatever new social platform is coming down thing. And I would be absolutely happy to do that for all of you. And I want to, this is my last show here, I want to thank Orange County, specifically Santa Ana, the Frida Theater, Mr. Crow, Logan Crow here, for having me be a guest, and I hope you all have a really, really wonderful holiday season and a very Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Zach Galligan, everyone.